Phase 5 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe comes to an end with Thunderbolts, the latest film in the multiverse saga that brings together a ragtag group of heroes to save the day yet again in New York City. Poor New York City. Hey everyone, I'm John Lunsford, and as we inch ever so close to Doomsday next year, we get another film about New York's destruction. And not only the Big Apple, but the exact same place in the Big Apple as the Battle of New York back in 2012 at the Avengers Tower. More on that later. So I'm going to give mostly a non-spoiler review of the film to start, although there are probably aspects of the film that seem like spoilers, like the Avengers Tower, but that was in the marketing. And since the marketing of this movie was a little confusing and did spoil some stuff in the movie, I'm going to get into just that, and then I'll get into more serious end of the movie spoilers and big picture MCU stuff after I give my review. For those that don't know exactly what this film is, it's basically set up to almost be Marvel's version of a film like Suicide Squad, a group of people that were once seen as villains shifting into more of a hero/anti-hero role and coming together to save the day. For the team that was marketed, you had Yelena Belova, aka another Black Widow, who is Natasha Romanoff's sister, who wasn't really a bad person, more so just an unfortunate Black Widow from the Red Room, trained to be an assassin and take people out across the world. You had Bucky Barnes, aka the Winter Soldier, and we know he's had plenty of bad things happen in his life, being the villain in both Captain America the Winter Soldier and kind of in Captain America Civil War after being brainwashed by Hydra. You have John Walker / U.S. agent, the newly crowned Captain America from the Falcon and Winter Soldier TV show, who basically turned kind of evil and killed a dude with a shield that led to a pretty cool looking image, but also led to him earning an other than honorable discharge. You have Ava Starr / Ghost, who was one of the primary villains from Ant-Man and the Wasp, although she's really only a villain because of it's one of those more of my attempts for survival kind of make me a villain kind of thing, but she's not really a villain anymore. You have Red Guardian, who I guess is only really a villain because he's Russian. And then you have Taskmaster, who, same thing as Yelena, only really bad because of being trained in the Red Room and being brainwashed. The movie starts with all these villains working random odd jobs for CIA Director Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, played by Julia Louis-Dreyfus. But it's in more of an unofficial capacity from our CIA Director role, instead dealing with illegal operations, which has actually led to the film starting with her in an impeachment hearing. We first saw Valentina in The Falcon and Winter Soldier trying to offer John Walker a way out of his disgraced Captain America tenure. She also pops up in the post-credits of Black Widow and has a small role in Wakanda Forever. This film definitely serves as more of a sequel to The Falcon and Winter Soldier, more so even than Captain America Brave New World. It also is very much a sequel to Black Widow, the movie, as well. The only one on this team who seems a little out of place is Ghost, although I actually really liked her in the film, and I do hope we see more of her in the future. The new character introduced in this film that you all saw in the trailers is Bob. We learned that Bob was the subject of Valentina's, who she basically wanted to turn into a Superman-like hero, someone who's nearly invincible and can basically replace the Avengers on his own, but of course gets controlled by Valentina and or the government. That really is kind of what all of the films have turned into now. Who can replace the Avengers? We'll get into that in deep spoiler territory in a second. We saw a little bit of it with Captain America Brave New World, and we saw a little bit of it here in this movie. For now, back to Thunderbolts. This film, I thought, was actually very well done, in my opinion. And it actually tackles a lot of tough subjects, more so than a lot of the MCU films have done in the past. Where a film like Suicide Squad took the villains of its world and just made them seem like a bunch of badasses kind of out to beat stuff up and potentially earn a little freedom, this film instead showed us how traumatized and depressed the villains of the world actually are. We saw the family dynamic and the love of like Tony Stark and Pepper Potts, Steve Rogers and Peggy Carter, Thor and Jane Foster. All the heroes had their romantic interests in a family worth fighting for. This group doesn't really have much to fight for anymore. Yelena is lonely without her sister because Scarlett Johansson's character died in Endgame, and she never really talks to her dad anymore. John Walker's family left him after the Captain America debacle and the Falcon and Winter Soldier, and Taskmaster was left with no one after the Red Room went away, and so on and so forth. This entire movie actually deals with very mature themes and handles them pretty well, in my opinion, to really get the point across and never really undercutting any of it with the typical MCU humor. Now, there's still plenty of that, so don't worry if that's what you like about the MCU. But this may be one of the few times we actually have characters that we really genuinely care about. Sure, Tony snapping his fingers was an emotional moment, but that was after over a decade of us learning to love the character over countless movies. There are characters here we're either seeing for the first time or have only seen a limited number of times, and we genuinely care about them and what they're going through. This is also the first time a lot of these characters have even shown up in a movie because they're on TV shows or Black Widow, which was pretty much released on Disney+. The best superhero movies, especially in the MCU, typically are the ones that have the best villains. Think Thanos, Killmonger, Loki. They're all villains that most people very much enjoyed, and we also understood the reasoning behind why they were doing what they were doing. This film is basically full of characters like that who were once villains, and we get a rare peek inside what makes these characters tick and how they live with the consequences of their actions. Despite the fact that this is a typical superhero movie with 3 super soldiers, a hero that can phase through solid material, and an invincible godlike hero/villain, this is actually probably the most real an MCU movie has ever felt. These people have dealt with some real trauma in their lives, and we can feel them living through it. This was one of those directors that I thought, oh man, they're giving him a Marvel movie. We've seen it work and fail miserably. The Russo brothers, for instance, had only really directed Yumi and Dupree and a couple other things before turning The Winter Soldier into one of the highest rated MCU films. Then they did Civil War, Infinity War, and Endgame, all 4 very successful. Then you have Chloe Zhao winning an Oscar for Nomadland, and then you get, well, Eternals. So for Jake Schreier, he had only done a couple of small comedy films over a decade ago, but then he did this, and I think he knocked it out of the park. I thought the story worked. It looked good and was ultimately really well acted as well, especially by Florence Pugh and Louis Pullman. I think if you're on the fence about this one, I would recommend you see it. If you want to catch up before it, I would probably recommend watching The Falcon and Winter Soldier on Disney+, which is one of the first TV shows we had, and I do recommend it in general. It was pretty good. And I would recommend watching Black Widow as well. Black Widow, not one of the better movies in my opinion, but still kind of helps with Scarlett Johansson's character, who we had for a long time in the MCU, and also ultimately builds up Florence Pugh's character, Yelena, who has been important to some of the story up to this point. I say villain for her because she was kind of a villain in Hawkeye, which she has a big role in if you want to go watch that as well. But if you just watch Black Widow, you'll get a lot about some of the characters in this movie. And that'll basically catch you up with most of the characters. I do have some gripes with this, specifically when it comes to Marvel's marketing strategy and the future of the MCU, but I don't want to get into too many spoilers there yet. I feel like I've already spoiled a bunch of stuff, but everything I'm saying has actually been revealed in the marketing. So whenever I try to say non-spoiler, I'm really just saying I'm only going to get into what you have already seen on TV and on YouTube and stuff, more so than what actually happened in the movie. And a lot of stuff was spoiled in the marketing. So because of that, I'm dinging my grade a little bit on Letterboxd, but despite that, I'm still going to give this one a must-see designation. I recommend you go see it on the biggest screen you can. While you can, sit back and enjoy a good superhero movie with some heart and some real thought put behind it. This will probably only be on big screens for a couple of weeks as Mission Impossible is coming out, and of course a lot of other big movies throughout the summer, so go see it while you can. Now, for those of you that have seen the film or don't care about spoilers, let's talk about the big picture of the MCU following this film, because after the Fantastic Four in July, Doomsday is next. Also, this movie was very much used as a marketing ploy for the Fantastic Four, with multiple different ads and trailers playing in my theater, including a custom IMAX countdown for it, and of course, there's a Fantastic Four post-credits tease as well. So while I think Thunderbolts tells its story very well, one of my biggest complaints about the MCU right now is the lack of following through on every movie being part of a larger equation. They have built a massive franchise where this is now the 36th film, along with 20 plus TV shows, and this film alone acts as a sequel or continuation of characters that have been featured in like 7 or 8 of those properties. I understand it's a lot to take in, but I feel like they have built too much of an expectation to want to know all the time what all the superheroes are doing at any given time. I've watched all 50 plus movies and TV shows, and it's not easy to keep track of. But every little nugget we get that calls back to X or Y character or storyline, it's great to have somewhat of an update. And while this film continues the stories of these specific heroes decently, it also tries to use this as a bit of a stepping stone before Doomsday, which we're all counting down the days to. So that's where we get into the marketing of this film and the MCU as a whole. We all remember the Chair live stream from Marvel a little over a month before Thunderbolts came out. While it was a genius marketing move to keep people on the edge of their seats to see who's coming next, the main problem with it is that they announced every single member of the Thunderbolts cast except one. So while Louis Pullman, who ultimately was kind of the bad guy in this, was announced, Olga Kurylenko, who played Taskmaster in this and in Black Widow, was not. Well, Taskmaster was killed in the first 30 seconds of her appearing. Taskmaster is one of the cooler characters in Marvel Comics, in my opinion. I actually discovered Taskmaster through Marvel vs. Capcom, the video game. With their ability to mimic any character's fighting style, they can essentially take on all characters in their moveset at once. When you watch Taskmaster at work, you see Captain America and his shield, you see Hawkeye and his bow, you see all the Black Widows and their fighting style, and so much more. But I thought she was kind of misused in Black Widow and then very much disrespected here when she catches a bullet to the head about 30 seconds after appearing. In so much of the promotion at first, she was considered one of the members of the team, but was eventually kind of removed from a lot of the marketing, although still being on most of the posters. It's just such a waste of a character, and I honestly don't know what else she would have added to the film had she been there during all the team fight scenes. Just don't put her in the film. Nothing would have changed if she was completely erased from this film, and honestly the MCU as a whole post Black Widow. Second, Bob was teased as almost like a funny yet mysterious side character. But even he was removed from some of the marketing, yet the Void was shown plenty. It wasn't hard to draw a comparison between the two and realize the Void was Sentry and that they were both Bob. From the beginning, this movie probably should have been marketed as just the 5 people that ultimately made up the team. Yelena, Red Guardian, Bucky, Ghost, and US Agent, and all working for Valentina. It made the marketing confusing going in, and then the Taskmaster aspect even more confusing after seeing the film. Then we get to the very end of the film. We're supposed to think this whole thing was a grand plan to hard launch the new Avengers, yet we get a 14-month jump ahead to where basically the new Avengers are in the old Avengers tower running things, yet are being sued by Sam for using the name Avengers. It's almost like a lazy legal version of Civil War that's supposed to be funny with all of Red Guardian's one-liners and trying to put a Z on the end to avoid trademark infringement. But my question now is, who are the Avengers to Sam? In Captain America Brave New World, we saw that President Ross wanted Sam to start back up the Avengers, but before that could happen, they had to stop Leader and then Ross himself after he hulked out and then was put on the raft to potentially never appear again. When it comes to the OG Avengers, Tony's dead, so no Iron Man. We'll see if Robert Downey Jr.'s Doom has any tie-in to Tony Stark or not. Steve is dead or living on the moon, depending on who you believe.
I'm sorry, wait, who are you?
Captain America.
I thought Captain America was on the moon.
So Sam is now Captain America, and we have a new Falcon to replace Sam. Thor is still alive, but off doing who knows what with his new child / niece / whatever love is to him. Natasha is dead, and Hawkeye is just getting old, I guess.
Did you turn your hearing aid off?
The Hulk is really the only Avenger that's still sort of kicking in on Earth. At least he was as of the end of She-Hulk, where we found out he has a kid randomly and came to a barbecue that had both She-Hulk and Daredevil there. So if Sam is really fighting them over the name, does that mean he's formed up his own team? Who is on that team then if Bucky is on this team? I would think he and Sam would be working together since they both worked together with Steve Rogers and had their whole own TV show after Endgame. Also, what happened to Valentina? Is Bucky still a congressman? He does have his more comic-accurate look back in his new Avengers uniform and kind of seems to have just moved on to be an Avenger full-time instead. But there's one thing that has bothered me with the MCU post-Endgame, and it's a small thing, and maybe it's just me and I should stop thinking about it, but it's the lack of funding all the superheroes that save the world. In The Falcon and Winter Soldier, we see Sam struggling with his family to make ends meet. In Spider-Man No Way Home, we see Peter struggling to get into MIT despite Tony Stark just a couple of years before that giving millions of dollars to MIT in the movie that we actually saw Spider-Man introduced in to fund all of their projects. I feel like there would be something from Stark Industries, from Pepper Potts or Happy that would help these heroes have everything they ever wanted in life after what they did to save the world. Especially characters like Spider-Man, who was like a son to Tony, and then Sam, who is now Captain America. So it seems like the Thunderbolts / New Avengers are in a new state-of-the-art facility that I'm assuming Valentina paid for. Because I assume it's not the government, since Sam's group is supposed to be the government-sanctioned version of the Avengers, and I assume it's not Stark Industries paying for it all, since it's their old building that Valentina has bought. It's just a little confusing setting up to the point of Doomsday, and maybe we'll get a little more at the end of the Fantastic Four, or maybe we'll just have to wait for Doomsday to see. But we still have the X-Men to worry about, we have Loki's storyline, the Fantastic Four storyline, which we now know they end up in our reality, so that kind of spoils that for us as well. I don't know, I just think the whole thing could have been done a little better, and it's maybe a little too broad for those of us that like to nitpick every aspect of the MCU storyline. Maybe I should just sit back and watch the movies and stop thinking about it so much. But I don't want that to take away from the story of this movie and the important dialogue about mental health and depression. It was a great movie, and I do highly recommend it, even if the overall MCU is still a bit of a mess, only a year away and one film away from Avengers Doomsday. Let me know what you thought about Thunderbolts and where you would rank it overall in the MCU. Plus, what are your expectations now for the Fantastic Four and Doomsday after seeing both Captain America and Thunderbolts so far this year? Also, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more movie reviews, TV recaps, and so much more right here on The Pop Culture Life.